Hello everyone, my name is Paul Stevens and welcome to our most anticipated webinar of the year, our annual predictions session sponsored by Price Labs and Minute. Now you've just been watching a preview video to our annual Shorties Awards. Our entries period is now open and you can book your tickets and find out more information at theshorties.com, which I believe the information is being posted in the chat now. So I am the editor of Short-Term Rentals here at International Hospitality Media, and I'm the host for today's session. And before we begin, let's introduce our first webinar series sponsor. This is Price Labs.
Hi there, we're Minute. We make home sharing work for everyone, hosts, guests, and communities alike. We've developed the world's first indoor and outdoor sensor built specifically for hospitality, and the only one that integrates with Airbnb. The Minute sensor monitors noise, occupancy, motion, and temperature. It's camera-free, so it protects your guest privacy. It can also alert you to guests smoking in your property. We can help you prevent parties and noise complaints, enhance guest experience, and protect your rental properties, just like a co-host would. When Minute detects noise, it notifies the host. It can also contact your guests via Airbnb messages, SMS, or an automated phone call. Similarly, you'll be the first to know when there's a risk of crowd, the AC malfunctions, or someone tries to enter your rental between bookings. And the best part is, you can install Minute yourself in minutes. That's why we're trusted by hosts and hospitality professionals in more than 100 countries. Find out more about how Minute can help you host happy at minute.com.
So you'll see that wasn't Price Labs, that was our other series sponsor, Minute. Very grateful for Minute support, and how here is the video for Price Labs.
Price Labs, a leader in revenue management, is unveiling its breakthrough release. Discover the new hyperlocal pulse dynamic pricing algorithm. By tapping into hyperlocal market trends, it's setting new standards in accurate pricing and response to market changes. With our smart presets, customize our algorithm easily and get personalized guidance. With our desktop app, speed up your workflows and manage multiple listings smoothly from your computers. Experience our award-winning product, created by a world-class data science team. With our global reach, anyone, anywhere can use Price Labs. Discover more game-changing updates crafted to propel your short-term rentals to success. Visit pricelabs.co/breakthrough today.
So thank you to Price Labs as well for their sponsorship. So here is our expert panel for today. Now today's session is going to work slightly differently, as we will cover 5 predictions today, one for each speaker in 5 10-minute Q&As, and we'll meet them all one by one. Got a fantastic panel for you today. So some webinar guidelines before we get started. All of the details are going to be posted in the chat by my colleagues, so please do go there if you'd like to ask any of our panelists a question at any time. Our speakers can then answer the questions in the chat while they're not speaking in the Q&A to me, and a recording will be sent round to all registrants within the next 24 hours. And just to put this segment into some context before we start, so the global short-term rental market is expected to grow at a KGR compound annual growth rate, that is, of 10.8% from 2024 to 2034, according to Future Market Insights. So let's first turn to our first area of growth. Come to Jessica very shortly to talk about this first trend, but our first prediction for 2024 is that we are expecting to see increased investment in AI leading to hyper-personalization. We've just seen how Airbnb has, in the stories there, acquired an AI stealth company called Gameplayer.ai for an estimated $200 million. And we've also seen companies, as you can see, such as PlumGuide, Journey, Hostaway, many, many more that we've covered on short-term rentals this year who are also flexing their muscles in this space. So Jessica, very briefly, if you could just introduce yourself and Abode Worldwide before we get into some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting me on to the webinar. My name is Jessica Gillingham, and I am the owner, founder of Abode Worldwide. We're a public relations agency that is focused on building the reputations of tech companies and enterprise operators across the lodging spectrum, so short-term rentals, hotel, the living sectors, and the multifamily sector.
Thank you, Jessica. And as we contextualize there, the AI ChatGPT space, this is something we've heard so much about. It certainly seems to have been the buzzword for 2023. Now looking ahead into 2024, how are you expecting perhaps companies such as Airbnb to utilize AI, change their use of it, particularly when it comes to maybe grouping or segmenting travelers?
So I think it's important to remember that AI didn't just kind of happen this year. Lots of companies, including lots of the OTAs, have been using AI in different forms for quite some time in order to make sure that the algorithms are matching, search terms and things like that. So AI didn't just come about when we all heard about it through ChatGPT. It's actually been used for quite some time. But what we will see over the next year is, as you say, this webinar is about growth, the huge exponential growth of the use cases of it and the adoption of it in every part of our lives. But if we were to look at, search and look at booking sites and that kind of area. So if we think Airbnb bought Game Planner, they bought it, it's their first acquisition since 2019, the first one since they're a public company. So this is huge. This is huge that they've done this. It says something. And they will want to use it for all sorts of reasons, but one of the main ones is around that guest customer journey and that guest customer experience. So my understanding from, obviously I don't know Brian personally, but from what I've read and heard and read, is that what they want to do is build a travel concierge service. And that means hyper personalization for users of the platform. And that doesn't just mean segmenting into different types of groups of travelers. It's not really even about segmenting into types of groups. It's actual personalization to you as an individual. So what will happen and start to happen increasingly is that marketing will be so personalized to actually you as an individual in a way that we already see from the likes of, say, Netflix or Amazon. It knows our preferences. It knows what we're searching for. It knows what we like. Increasingly, the booking platforms will be understanding more and more about their customers, about what their preferences are, what they really want. Now, they're not able to get into our brains and get that information just yet, but by our kind of user habits, our searching online, the how long we're staying on websites, what it is we're looking at when we're looking at one picture, we're spending more seconds looking at one picture than another picture. And more data and information from reviews from everywhere really helps companies to understand their customers in a deeper, better way in order to build a deeper, better relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And what that then also does is it creates loyalty as well. When you're getting served up the things that you really want, your loyalty is becomes you become much more loyal. And what will also happen, and what I believe Airbnb is looking to do, plus Plum Guide, plus Booking, they're all looking to do, is actually to match you to what you want, rather than give you all the choices of things that you don't want. It actually, instead of becomes search, it becomes a matchmaking process. So it's really exciting to see how it can all develop and how it's all going to unfold. And, that's just one part of what AI could and is doing in terms of marketing.
I think Airbnb is such a fascinating example because, yes, we talk here about the acquisition they've just done. Even in the last week, they've had a senior team reshuffle and they've brought in a chief business officer to expand into new products. And like you say, we are expecting them to become this more all-rounded travel company. I guess particularly for the benefit of our audience, we've got OTAs, we've got property managers, we've got suppliers, lots of different people tuning in today. But how do you think companies are going to continue increasing efficiency and growing at scale with AI more in 2024 than they have in 2023?
I think it's also important to talk about there's a divide as well. There's a divide of those who are embracing and using AI and those who perhaps are not. And that's across, all industries. It's not just short-term rentals or even travel. It's that divide of, there's always going to be early adopters or later adopters. The important thing is at some point, anybody who's at any kind of business needs to be picking up the tools and really educating and understanding on how they should be using and can be using AI in their business. Now, the beauty, I think, of certain sectors is that other companies can do the heavy lifting for you. So, for instance, your PMS or your, the different tools that you're using, like we just looked at the advert there for Price Labs, they're already using AI, so you don't need to learn how to do it yourself. You just use a software and a technology company that has invested in huge amounts of developers, and they know what they're doing. They're doing it. So when we think that we're not using AI, actually, if we've got a PMS, we've got a pricing tool, we've got a guest messaging tool, companies like Breezeway, Hospitable, Hostaway, Journey, they're all using AI already and developing it for their customers so that they can improve the way that they do their business and that they can provide better services for their customers. So that will just continue to develop. So it's really interesting. You can kind of go with software, but it's also really important to think about, right, how can I use it that's not part of that as well? How can I use, build my own personal assistant even that does things for me, that I'm not then reliant, on software or other people's technology.
Thank you, Jessica. And of course, you're coming at this from a content PR perspective as well. So I'd be interested to gauge your opinion on how you see ChatGPT, AI, machine learning continuing to revolutionize the industry from a content perspective as well.
So I actually don't particularly come to it from that perspective. I come to it from a strategic business perspective. What does it do for a business? What does it do for an industry? But in terms of content, it's really exciting, the way that it is changing, the way that people can get content or understand content or whatever. But I think all of us know that the quality of what comes out of ChatGPT is iffy at the moment, but that will improve, as time goes on. We all see all the LinkedIn posts, that are really clearly done by, Bard or ChatGPT. Some of them are better than others or whatever, but we're seeing it all there. In terms of for vacation rental managers, being able to use a tool like ChatGPT or any other number of copywriting tools for listings, so not just the listings, but also the images, is an amazing thing to be able to have, because it saves time, it saves money, it saves resources. It's a game changer, really. But I think from a kind of PR perspective, the things that PR does for a company is it builds a reputation, it builds a brand, it builds the understanding of what you do, it builds trust in what you do, it helps position you, it does all all of those things. The actual tactical bit, the content bit, or the even the placement bit is almost by the by. It's actually what is the outcome. You want your customers to really understand and trust what you do and take some kind of an action about that. So for me, I think it's just it's revolutionary. It's revolutionary on what it can do.
And so we hear about how AI is perhaps being feared by some companies. In other sectors particularly, and I saw a YouGov survey which we'll be quoting in our predictions piece coming out later this week. Do you think this is something that particularly the travel industry or this vertical is defying that sort of trend? of fear of AI?
So I'm not so sure about that. I think that we all fear things that we don't understand. So if you don't understand something, it obviously feels very fearful. I think as a society, we all have our fears about AI. You know, there's in all different ways because we don't know what the full power is. And the fact that the speed at which it's being implemented and used and developed is something that we have never seen. You know, it's a revolution that's bigger than when the internet came or when we all moved to mobile. Like, it's huge. So it's obviously scary in all kinds of ways, but it's also really exciting. And I think that travel of itself and short-term rentals is part of travel, is a technology first, even though it's hospitality and it's all about people. Technology has always been used to ease the process, whether the process is guest experience or it's trip planning or it's providing any kind of service. Travel is quite forward thinking in the way that it uses technology compared to other industry like construction or, you know, wherever else there might be. So whether we're bucking the trend, I would say we're probably bang on the trend. There are people that are using it a lot and are those early adopters and are already flying with it. And then there are others who are not. So we're probably right bang on where any other industry is. And it's, you know, it's fascinating to watch it all unfold.
Thank you very much, Jessica. It's going to be very exciting to see how it all plays out, given that probably 12 months ago ChatGPT was not something that was on our agenda too much. So thank you, Jessica. We'll move now on to our second prediction for 2024. I'll come to Hector very shortly, but the prediction revolves around how we're expecting to see the wellness tourism segment to surge in popularity once again, not only as a source of self-regeneration and wellness, but also regenerating the environment and being able to operate on a sustainable scale too. So Hector, please, from Unplugged, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hi guys, I'm Hector, co-founder of Unplugged. We very simply provide digital detoxes at off-grid cabins in nature. So we launched about 3.5 years ago and currently got 20 cabins across the UK with big plans.
Fantastic. And I didn't necessarily mean to have two of your competitors, if you can call them this as the context on this slide, but it was really to illustrate the growth of this particular segment. So why now do you think wellness or detox tourism, as you're working on with Unplugged, why is this going to see even more of an uptick in the year ahead?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I mean, in many ways, it is you know, a very old thing. Going to a cabin in nature and not being on technology is something people were doing thousands of years ago. So I think it has been happening for the last few years, and you know, it's not just COVID. Obviously, that's been a big accelerant, but in the last 15, 20 years, our lives have drastically changed. You know, like 25, 30 years ago, no one was online at all. And now I know in the UK, adults are spending 11 hours a day online. So how we spend our time has massively changed. That's obviously accelerated in the last few years. COVID was a big step change in terms of that, where the boundaries between, you know, our work life and our home life have really kind of blurred now. Everything's on the same device. You know, from our phone, we're getting work emails, we're getting Instagram notifications. That it really is overwhelming. And so I think it's a reaction to that, to be honest, is like people maybe aren't switching off on the kind of traditional holidays that they might have done 10 years ago. And so having to do these more, I would say, deliberate digital detoxes effectively, or just really get off grid.
Yeah, and from what I can understand, the digital detox aspect of it is very crucial, almost perhaps a USP for your product with Unplugged. I'm interested now on sort of the sustainability angle that you're using with Unplugged. How exactly are your cabins built sustainably, and how important do you think this comes within the consumer agenda moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think it's with every startup, you're dealing with so many forces that are getting in the way of what you're trying to do. And so I think it's wise to get on the right side of history with a few of them as well. And sustainability is obviously something that is only going to become more and more important. And what we're doing here, we're not taking buildings that already exist and bringing people to them like many of the short-term rental space. We're actually putting properties out into nature. So, I think how we go about that is really important. It might not matter so much for a small handful of cabins, but if we're talking about hundreds or thousands of cabins, I think, that there is an ethical duty. And I also think it's only going to get more important. The bigger you become as a company, the more responsibility you have, frankly. And then in terms of how we go about it, I mean, the good thing about it, the concept itself is, kind of fairly sustainable. It's off-grid cabins, so they're solar powered, compostable toilet, which gets composted on site. So it's very minimal impact, which is nice. And then in terms of the cabins themselves, they're actually built in as modular buildings. So we can, in theory, take them apart and use it to build another building with the same building blocks. So there's a nice story behind that. I think it's just understanding like what exactly we're doing, because again, you're so focused on just trying to grow with any business that you maybe lose sight of the impact that you're having as well. And then I guess the last point there is people just care about it more. That you have a generation coming up now who really do care about this. They really care that the companies that they are buying from are sustainable. So I think it's also just good business.
I must say, I'm fascinated by the idea of modular housing, and I think this is going to be a big trend moving forward in 2024 and beyond. I know one thing that you're doing with Unplugged as well, which is noticeable perhaps against some competitors and other companies within the space. It's really how you're driving awareness through your social channels. So could you tell us a little bit about this strategy and who you're perhaps targeting as your target demographics?
Yeah, ironic that social is a big part of what we do. But I think we have taken a very conscious decision to focus on the digital detoxing. And it's actually something that the other players in the space, you can see a couple of them here, have not gone after. So I think what's interesting is all of the companies, myself included, are basically getting people out into nature via cabins, which sell the experience. But there are many different ways to skin that. And for us particularly, we're actually trying to position somewhere between accommodation and retreat. So it's always 3 nights. Upon arrival, you literally lock your phone in a box. We give you a map and a Nokia and leave you to it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, one is we almost see Unplugged as the social experiment. So it's like, if we can make this a huge success, then I think the future is much more malleable than people think. And by us succeeding, it does actually move the future in a different direction, because we're heading towards this world where everything is more online. We're spending more time, we're sat on the tube watching Netflix these days. But if we can normalize going and spending 3 nights offline in a cabin, then that will create some really interesting changes in society. And I guess the other point is, again, it just makes marketing a lot easier to really stand for something. And social is a great example. So influencers is probably our main social channel. And again, the people who spend their life on social media, which these influencers do because of their business, are the people who need this the most. And so actually, by tapping into that, it means that it really is social friendly content, ironically. And then I guess the other point there is like you kind of have to, if we want to make that change and help people be more mindful about how much time they're spending online, then you have to go online to find those people, right? And it's like, how can we use the tools that are out there to create this positive change in the world? Because there's no point us putting our tinfoil hats on and going and saying we're not going to touch the internet because we think it's bad. And it's just amazing. Like, it's just amazing the impact of virality. Like, the game has completely changed. I think especially this space, short-term rentals, when you're talking about paid OTAs, like they're incredibly competitive spaces. And obviously there's still some value to be had from really learning how to hack Airbnb or whatever it might be. But actually there are many of these new channels now which are just uncharted territory. So it's, how can you have a really strong Instagram Reels strategy or whatever it might be? And I think what's interesting about these channels is they're constantly evolving. So just learning to be on the forefront of that. But you can go from a place where you are no longer paying for advertising, and you're actually in some cases getting paid, but basically getting free. I mean, we had someone stay recently. We gave them a free stay, cost us I think £50 and they put an Instagram reel up, and it had to date got 18 million views. And the kind of business value we generate off the back of that is just unbelievable. So I think it's really understanding how to play the game so that we can make the change we want to make in the world.
And it's also not just Gen Z as well that you're targeting. I think that's important to clarify.
100%. Yeah, I'd say our core customers, millennials, actually a bit older than Gen Z. We are seeing, I think, a lot of, because of the channels we use, we're actually seeing really good uptake now with Gen Z. But it's it's amazing the kind of breadth of exposure you can get.
Thank you very much, Hector. I know, just looking at the comments there, a comment from Bob Garner, love the sound of Unplugged, so needed and breathe. Thank you for that comment, Bob. Thank you, Hector, for that trend. Very excited to follow that, and you can see more of Hector's thoughts in our predictions article coming out this week. So we'll move on to our third prediction now. Again, there's been quite a lot of overlap already just from our first couple of trends. I'll come to Neely very shortly. So the prediction that we're making is that we're covering brand authenticity and transparency as we're anticipating a big push for added trust and security in a landscape amidst tightening regulations and a drive to garner hotel-like guest loyalty. We certainly heard loyalty already. Neely, please, if you could just introduce yourself briefly first.
Thank you, Paul. So hi, everyone, I'm Neely. I'm the Managing Director of I-PRAC. I-PRAC is the industry's only verification and membership platform that 100% guarantees that short-term rental agencies and hosts are in fact 100% legitimate. So when hosts and agencies go through I-PRAC's very meticulous verification process, what they can then do is guarantee 100% peace of mind to their guests as a result of I-PRAC approval. I'm also a professional content writer within the space, specializing in short-term rentals, as well as that.
Thank you, Neely. Delighted to have you on this session today. You've already sort of hinted at a couple of angles I want to come at this question at, and we're starting to see guest expectations rise all the time. That's nothing new that we're hearing. In February, Airbnb was saying that it was going to implement mandatory ID verification. Again, that's probably nothing new, really. So I wanted to get your thoughts on how important trust and transparency you see now within the whole booking process as we move into 2024.
Yes, it's interesting that you've mentioned Airbnb's pursuit of wanting to verify more of their hosts. I was actually reading an article yesterday, I think, and what's trending at the moment because of this time of year are articles that are advising travelers on how not to fall victim to Airbnb scams come 2024. Simple Google search, if you put in Airbnb trends 2024, those are some of the first few articles that come up, and that alone tells you so much. So obviously we know that Airbnb is talking about verifying their hosts a lot, but what's really interesting, I'm going to read you something that I actually found on Airbnb's website under verification. What it says is this: our aim for guests and hosts is to trust each other. Although no verification process is foolproof and we cannot guarantee someone's identity, we do take steps to help everyone feel confident that hosts are in fact genuine. And again, that says so much about the verification process that Airbnb are supposedly pushing. They have said themselves that they cannot guarantee, even after taking these apparent steps, that these hosts are in fact 100% legitimate. And it's really important to remember in 2023 alone, so this year alone, 59,000 fraudulent listings have been taken off Airbnb, and those are the only ones that have been reported. So just think of the ones that have yet to be found. So while I appreciate the pursuits and the intention, I am very interested to see how they're actually going to go about verifying their hosts. That's of course only Airbnb, but when you take those facts into account, the 59,000, the fact that Airbnb themselves are saying that they cannot actually guarantee that they can verify hosts 100%, that within itself tells you how absolutely important it is to still have that trust and that transparency within our industry, because that is probably the biggest thing that is lacking. And I think something that's a lot of hosts and agencies, for one reason or another, are maybe not so comfortable to talk about. I feel like a lot of people, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, to admit that travelers prefer hotels, they prefer booking via the larger hotel chains because they don't trust short-term rental operators. And that is a fact. The statistics tell us that. It's an unfortunate fact, but it's true.
And do you think, do you think this whole phenomenon really is Airbnb trying to, certainly not just quoting Airbnb within this, but it's companies like Airbnb who are trying to return to those raw elements of hospitality, and that's even despite having, you know, AI and ChatGPT and living in this tech-enabled world we live in now?
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody wants to be, I would like to think that most people want to be more hospitable within our industry, but it's really interesting because I think that the biggest thing missing from hospitality at the moment is hospitality itself. If we look at the, you know, the trends that we're speaking about come 2024, as you say, in a very tech-enabled world, the majority of the trends that we speak of, particularly within the tech space, although they are definitely worthy of praise, they are definitely worthy of, you know, speaking about and celebrating, what's really interesting is that the majority of them are designed to make the host's life easier, the agency's life easier. You know, ChatGPT, for example, is a basic example. It's promoted as a tool to help you save time when it comes to creating content, copy, whatever it is that you're using it for. It's a very self-indulgent thing to say that we are going to use these tools, we are going to take heed of these trends because they save us time, because they enable faster growth for us, because they enable us to be more efficient. But if something is saving you time, but as a result is damaging the guest experience, which, you know, something like ChatGPT, it probably is, then that just defies the whole point of hospitality. So while I do think that come 2024, humanization will be a luxury, you know, because that is at the epitome, that is the epitome of hospitality, I do think that more and more people will want to be more hospitable within their businesses. But I think, unfortunately, that will be diluted somewhat, because a lot of hosts and agencies are coming from a place of serving themselves before serving their guests.
And this whole trend here that we're talking about is about brand authenticity and transparency, and there's lots of angles. I'm going to approach regulations within the article too, and then this surging scrutiny of the space. But amid all of this landscape, how do you think short-term rental brands like Airbnb, the OTAs, property managers, how can they really garner hotel-like loyalty that we're seeing, even if they don't have, Airbnb, for example, doesn't have its own loyalty schemes? How can brands achieve this level of loyalty?
I think that's an excellent question, by the way. I think we need to bring it back to the basics. I think we have a tendency to overcomplicate things within our industry in order to attract more loyalty from guests, from human beings. You need them to trust you. Yes, it's fantastic that we have all of these initiatives and trends, but at the core of every decision any human being makes is the question, can I trust this person? Can I trust this organization? Yes, it's fantastic that this short-term rental operator is sustainable, but can I trust them? Yes, it's fantastic that the marketing is hyper-personalized, but can I trust them? Yes, it's great that I have all of these options and it's convenient and the booking process tech-wise is easier, but can I trust them? So I think more and more operators within the industry need to start with that before they even think about anything else, because unless you have actually earned, because it's something that needs to be earned, unless you've actually earned the trust of your guests, which Airbnb isn't doing at the moment, unless you've actually done that, you cannot even think about things like loyalty, things about referrals, recommendations, even growing your business. Everything begins with whether or not the guest trusts you to deliver, whether they believe that you're going to actually give them what you're telling them you're going to deliver. So, yeah,
I really like the angle and the perspective that you're providing. I can see Robin, one of our fellow panelists, will meet shortly. He agrees. Your colleague Chris as well. Differentiation in the industry has to be run by professionals, not just anyone with a property. This will gain a more respected industry. Exactly what we were getting at. Thank you very much, Neely, for those thoughts and insights, and looking forward to sharing more in our predictions article later this week. Thank you, Neely.
Thank you.
So moving on to prediction number 4. So I'm going to speak to Bram from AirDNA very shortly. We're going to be looking at urban revival and expanding seasonality. And we're looking ahead to a resurgence in urban tourism for a number of reasons, and more all year round tourism. And there's plenty to discuss. So Bram, again, like a fellow panelist, if you could just introduce yourself briefly.
Well, thanks so much, Paul. I'm Bram Gallagher, so I'm coming up on about a decade of hospitality research. Previous to AirDNA, I was the senior hotel economist over at CBRE. I switched over to short-term rentals because it's such a dynamic and interesting field. AirDNA is a firm that collects listing information for Airbnb and also VRBO to capture insights, trends about the short-term rental industry. And our customers are hosts, managers, investors, people interested in this space, anyone that wants to make informed decisions and get some of the best data out there with AirDNA.
Thank you, Bram. Now, one thing that working with your team, I've seen so much data around events and around particularly Taylor Swift's Eras tour. There's probably nothing new for people tuning in, and we've seen a lot of data about the impact on economies around the world. So what, if any, events do you see happening in 2024 that are going to continue this revival in cities in 2024?
Well, sure, yeah. And I'll have to preface this by saying I do sit in Atlanta, so a lot of my research is US centric, so I do apologize for that. But one of the things that we know is that, yeah, Taylor Swift's tour had incredible impacts across the US this year in big cities. And of course, she's having the European tour in 2024. So we've certainly got that to look forward to. We're going to see some measurable uplift in tourism activity or across Europe as she tours there. Another big event that, of course, we're paying very close attention to is the Paris Olympics and all of the buzz around that. So a lot of cities in France are going to see some lifts there as well. Something else, to look at urban, how it did in 2023. It had a very, very good year. We sort of, in the US, we can divide things by location type. So we've got urban over here. We also have, and urban is often, we talk about group travel, business travel, of course, also Taylor Swift travel. But we'll also have resort locations, mountain resorts and coastal resorts, and those, about half of the listings in the US are in those resort areas. And of course, they are very highly correlated with leisure. So in some ways, we can kind of compare and contrast that way. Urban, the demand growth in a percentage term year over year, urban was twice as strong as coastal resorts, 50% stronger than mountain resorts in 2023. So urban had a pretty strong year. Now, for 2024, the economic landscape is changing a little bit. So I think 2023, when it comes to the economy, it performed well, but we started the year off with incredibly high inflation and a lot of uncertainty. My fellow economists were essentially predicting recession all year long. It didn't materialize, which is great, but that uncertainty, I guess that looming problem, I think, did have a dampening effect on people's attitudes towards, leisure travel, and that affected coastal and mountain resorts. So in 2024, on the other hand, inflation has gone down remarkably. In fact, wages are now growing at a faster pace than inflation. So flipped from the beginning of 2023. So now I think people are going to start planning those leisure trips again. We're going to see a resurgence in leisure. Urban, on the other hand, has been declining, but there are a couple things that may help urban in 2024 as well. One of the big things is international travel to the US. So if we're talking about between Europe and the US, this year for the leisure traveler, we saw the exchange rate at the beginning of this year, dollar it did reach parity momentarily with the euro. So very, very strong dollar. This encouraged a lot of travel in the US to overseas to Europe. In fact, more of that travel than travel from Europe to the US. So international travel to the US has not recovered. It is way down from that. And a big part of international travel, if you're visiting the US, you're usually going to visit urban areas. At least some of the time is going to be spent in those urban areas. So we've noticed that the exchange rate has gotten a little bit more normalized, if you will. European inflation, the euro area inflation now is a little bit lower than the US rate, so 2.9 versus 3.2. So we're expecting that to further normalize. So that could encourage more travel from abroad to the US and into those urban areas. So that's certainly something that we're paying attention to. Something else too, and something that I think is really great about events like Taylor Swift or like the Olympics or like the Super Bowl or things that really draw people in, is that this business is so powerfully a repeat business. When we had COVID strike, that outbreak, people fled the cities, and we haven't yet recovered from the demand that we saw pre-pandemic in urban areas, because that repeat business just isn't there. You spend 2 years away from the cities, it's not really in the front of your mind. It's more unfamiliar, maybe intimidating. On the other hand, the fact that urban had such a good year this year, I think maybe bodes well for repeat travel in 2024 as well.
I'm really glad you mentioned the Paris Olympics, because I'm going to be there. I'm going to be going myself in July next year, so I'll certainly be able to report how busy that is.
Fantastic.
One thing we really wanted to touch on as well is this constantly expanding seasonality, and we're expecting this to grow even more. Now, I've got a couple of reasons in mind why this might be the case, but you're the expert, so I'd like to get your perspective first of all.
Sure, yeah. So I think there was definitely interest in the shoulder season this year for two reasons. One, we had a blistering heat wave, and this is global. So summer is usually the top travel season, and it was in August just too hot to travel, with a surprising exception of Phoenix and Scottsdale. So amazingly enough, had real nice demand growth even in August, as it set all-time records for heat. But generally speaking, it did have something of a depressing effect on some of the peak times. And something else too is that because we had that very high inflation rate at the beginning of the year, a lot of economic uncertainty, and people, when they're planning their trips, they were keeping that in mind. If you're working, and we did have a lot of employment, so this economy, even though it did have an uncertainty, really strong employment, so people still needed to take vacations. So what do you do when you think the economy is in trouble but you need to take a vacation? You look for the best deals that you can. So whether this is expressed by going to, say, out of the way places, maybe visiting some of the cities where prices are somewhat lower than, say, hotel alternatives, whether it is visiting in the off season. And that's something that we saw in the booking all year round. And it's proven out that September, October, even November, the demand there is quite a bit stronger than, say, the demand improvement we saw over the summer. So again, because this is repeat business, because this is a repeat business, we think that if you were to make these visits in September and October and you have a really good time, then you might do it the next year as well. So this expanding shoulder season is sort of a longer term trend. We saw a big acceleration of it this year. We think that that is going to continue in the future. And I think hosts and guests are really getting the best out of this. Because the utilization of the short-term rental now, we can spread it out over a longer period of time. We don't have these really pinch periods where you can't find a room versus long stretches where hosts will not be able to rent out. So this is a really nice development, I think, for the industry.
Thank you, Bram. I know we were going to talk about regulations, but just so we can fit Robin in at the end, we'll make sure that we're covering the regulations and the impact on urban tourism in the article. So thank you very much for your insights there, and very fascinating looking at the year ahead there for urban tourism. We'll move on to our fifth and final prediction for 2024. Robin, you've had to wait very patiently, so I'll come to you very shortly. So the prediction revolves around how consolidation and new players are expected to enter the industry. And certainly the signs are pointing to an acceleration of consolidation M&A activity in the year ahead. We've already seen new players like Hyatt enter the short-term rental industry. Robin's company has just done an acquisition. We're also seeing another company, Inhabit, they're up for sale as well. We covered on short-term rentals this week. So plenty in the pipeline. Robin, I'll get you to introduce yourself, and I'll sort of part this as well with, please just introduce yourself and explain the acquisition that you've just recorded as well.
Thank you, Paul. I'm delighted to be here, and certainly not bored sitting here listening to the comments of the other speakers. There's definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on out there. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Moving Mountains. We're based in Colorado, serving ski markets in the USA. We've been in business for 25 years, having grown from one home to approximately 250 luxury and ultra luxury vacation homes. We're in 4 ski markets: Vail, Beaver Creek, Breckenridge, and Steamboat Springs, where we were founded and operated for really the first 20 years. We see ourselves as a niche player. We're focused on service and guest experience. Loved Neely's comment about hospitality, because that is not missing from what we do. But we are specifically aligned to service the needs and the wants of the true luxury traveler.
And that sort of coincides with the acquisition of Triumph Mountain Properties. So how does this sort of feed into your acquisition and growth strategy moving forward?
Well, Paul, it's interesting that you mentioned, does this point to a trend? Triumph Mountain Properties is definitely, for us, it was a strategic purchase. We could say we're successful at the third attempt. We've been trying to buy this company for 15 years. We have known the Triumph team since it was founded, and we've always felt incredibly aligned with their brand and service philosophies. So that acquisition is really a natural fit for us, consolidating our position as a market leader in luxury for all the 4 markets that we operate in. Hard to say what 2024 will bring beyond the growth that we already have planned. So we're diversifying our brand into other areas. We recently launched Moving Oceans, which is our yacht charter brokerage, offering yacht charters in the Caribbean. It's sort of where we came from. If that really sounds like it's out of left field, my wife and I used to run a luxury yacht in the British Virgin Islands. So we feel very comfortable going back to that world, but we also recognize that the people that are our clients are people that like to play in the outdoors, and a ski vacation is as exciting and fun as a sailing trip around the Virgin Islands. So That's the reason for that. And then we're anticipating a Q1 launch for our Moving Beaches program, which will be taking us into beach markets starting in Costa Rica. So we are interested in growing, but we're not sitting here in a more predatory fashion with a big pile of cash. We're looking for smart growth opportunities.
Excellent. I mean, you're quite a familiar face at industry events, and I know you were one of the most well-attended ones in the industry last week. And you mentioned this term unreasonable hospitality. It seems relevant to quote it when it's been such a recurring thread throughout the session. So how is this term relevant to operators as they scale over the next year?
Well, thanks, Paul. I mean, unreasonable hospitality, that's a term that was first coined by Will Guidera, who was the former owner of 11 Madison Park, a restaurant in New York, and which grew from being known as one of the best restaurants. They made the top 50 list, but the book really chronicles their journey from being a top 50 restaurant in the world to the #1 restaurant in the world. And what they realized was they were, to make that list of 50, they were already operating at a supreme level of execution, excellence, and service, and the food quality. And what they realized as they began looking at, well, how do we move up this list, is that there were going to be other things that they would need to do to consider to deliver a different level of experience. And as they went down this path, I think, very similar to us, our business is called Moving Mountains. We really set out to move a mountain for our guests, if that's what it would take to make them happy. Will chronicled this in his now best-selling book, which I see as something that everyone in our industry should be reading, because it's kind of eye-opening when you can see someone so persuasively make the business case for why we need to be unreasonable in the level of hospitality that we deliver. And that does not necessarily mean that you have to break the bank. I think it speaks a lot to the fact that you have to listen to your customer, and you have to seek out those opportunities to be noticed by your guest, and to move away from just doing what's easy and think about, do what's unreasonable, because that's actually something that the guest is going to notice. So Will, amazingly, was the keynote speaker at the DARM conference. I was just there in Nashville. I actually got to ask him a question at the end about, how you meet the challenge of growing and still delivering unreasonable hospitality. And he was quick to fire back that it wasn't just about 11 Madison Park and a team of 100 people that worked there, but they grew their business to, I think it was over 10 restaurants, 1,800 employees, serving thousands of meals every single day. And he said, it's because it became part of our culture, because of how we spoke about the business, how we talked about the business, how we solved problems, to do things that might have seemed unreasonable. But actually, in many cases, what you discover is that it doesn't take as much as you think. And that even the smallest gestures can have an incredible impact. So,
and I know the industry can sometimes be guilty of looking at things and the landscape with perhaps rose-tinted spectacles or something like that. But I know you've got a particular opinion on my next question, and that is, what do you see for the M&A or consolidation landscape, and where do you think the new players entering the industry could fit into that?
I think the landscape is changing. It's great to go to conferences and see what the buzz is and see what people are talking about. I think we will continue to see new players enter the industry. I loved hearing about Hector's business. I mean, that really points to how you hear the saying, riches and niches. There's ways to differentiate yourself. When you can find a way to differentiate yourself in this crowded marketplace, then I think that you'll find that opportunity. The landscape, I think, is changing for those that maybe had it easy for the last couple of years. So many people entered the industry. We saw that big increase in supply, which must have been backed by numbers of new players coming into the market. speaking about the industry in a way that many of us who've been doing this for a while, we just didn't understand it. I think you're going to see some of those businesses struggling. That's kind of what I'm hearing. There was discussion of potentially we'll see some distressed sales, definitely lower multiples of the weaker players. It's as we kind of weather this current economic storm. My feeling is that the thing that carries you through times of change are the relationships. So, fundamentally, Will Gadara talked about, this is a relationship business. It doesn't matter. Hospitality is about relationships. And having a good business is about all the relationships within it and making sure that all of them are taken care of. We think about taking care of our staff. It's those relationships with owners and communication with owners. I heard that from Key Data. They're the data guys saying, our recommendation is you go out and form stronger relationships if you don't already have them with your homeowners, because that is what's going to carry you through this difficult time. So, what does that mean for M&A on the horizon? I think that you'll see some consolidation, but maybe not of the stronger brands. I think those stronger brands still have some legs. I think you'll see some people age out of this business. That's been an undercurrent. On the tech side, your mention of Inhabit IQ, maybe that points to consolidation that will naturally occur within the tech space. We've all been waiting to see what Inhabit was going to do with that. So, those PE acquisitions and roll-ups tend to have a lifespan, and that one just seems to have run its course. And I'm hearing of some similar kind of moves going on behind some of the VRM acquisitions of late, that the PE players, they have a certain amount of time that they want to be in the game before they flip it on to somebody else. So who knows?
Thank you, Robin. That seems like an appropriate point to finish. Very timely and important message for everyone tuning in today. Well, I want to say a big thank you to all of our contributors today, to Jessica, to Hector, to Neely, to Bram, and to Robin for what's been a fast-paced hour, but we really value all of your insights, and you'll be able to hear more from all of our speakers in our predictions article, which I mentioned will be going live later this week on shorttermrentals.com. So that's it for our short-term rentals webinars in 2023. We'll be back, though, in the new year on Tuesday, the 30th of January, again, at the same time, 4 p.m. GMT, to explore Eyes on Design, how to pique the interest of prospective guests. I should say, actually, this is the first time that we've got Airbnb on a webinar. So I'll leave you to find out more very soon when we post about that on our channels. Hope you can join us again then, and the sign-up link is in the chat now. Our next in-person gathering now is our annual Recharge event, which takes place this year in Belfast, Northern Ireland on the 22nd and 23rd of January. It's a fantastic, intimate event bringing together lots of people from various asset classes for a variety of property tours, discussions. Yeah, it's a fantastic event. It's also my first visit to the city, so I would certainly recommend you join us. And again, ticket information is in the chat. For opportunities to work with us, please do contact my colleague Jordan, whose details are on the screen for you now. We're going to keep this session open for just another 2 minutes if you want to jot down any details that you've seen in the chat or connect further with our speakers. Big thank you to Price Labs, to Minute, our excellent speakers today, and of course to all of you for tuning in today. As the Christmas jumper suggests, we wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, however you're celebrating, and we'll see you all again in 2024. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals.